Between December of 2021 and December of 2022, a lot of crazy things happened for Cincinnati football. Going back to December 31st of 2021, the Cincinnati Bearcats had made the college football playoff and matched up with Alabama. The Bearcats were the 4 seed and the Crimson Tide were the 2 seed. While the game really wasn't all that close, this was a monumental step for Cincinnati as a Group of 5 team had found a way to sneak into the playoff. This was absolutely unheard of, but after sending Desmond Ridder and Sauce Gardner off to the NFL, Cincinnati would continue on. On June 10th of 2022, Cincinnati officially joined the Big 12 as a conference member, and they would officially be admitted 1 year later. The Group of 4 team had went from the college football playoff to now entering the Big 12, and things looked to be on the up for them. Except November 27th of 2022 would be a crazy day. Luke Fickell decided to leave Cincinnati and instead take the head coaching job at the University of Wisconsin. The Bearcats had now lost their beloved coach who had rebuilt them, and now they'd have to move in a new direction. But they would then make a critical error in terms of this coaching hiring process, as on December 5th of 2022, just a few days later, they would hire Scott Satterfield to be their next head coach. On paper, this wasn't a terrible idea, but in retrospect, it was an awful idea. Satterfield came to Cincinnati by way of both Appalachian State and Louisville, as he helped the Mountaineers have a tremendous program in the mid-2010s, and then helped fix the mess that Bobby Petrino had left at Louisville. While Satterfield was okay, nobody thought this was a home run hire, and flash forward to late August of 2025, and the Bearcats are now in year 3 of Scott Satterfield. They lost last night in Nebraska, and I'm not quite sure if things are going to get any better. In today's video, we're going to talk about the most bizarre coaching hire of the last couple of years, as that was Scott Satterfield to Cincinnati. Not only did they get a coach who just really isn't all that good, but they paid a ton of money for him. We're also sort of going to examine the rise and fall of Cincinnati football over the last couple of years and just talk about all this. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about this very confusing coaching hire. Nestled in southern Ohio along the Ohio River, we have one of the hidden gem cities in the United States, and that is Cincinnati. They have a couple of colleges and universities like Xavier, but the main team that everybody follows is the Bearcats. They're the second best college football program in the state behind Ohio State, and they've had a pretty good history. At one point, they were considered a power school in football as they were in the Big East, but as conference realignment moved on in the mid-2010s, the Bearcats got left behind. They were stuck in the American Conference, which was probably the best of the Group of 5, and while Cincinnati was really good, they just could not keep their coaches. Whether it was Brian Kelly or Butch Jones, every time the Bearcats found success and got a new coach, they would leave the Bearcats program in order to coach at the Power 4. But Luke Fickell did not do that. After being the interim head coach at Ohio State, Fickell would eventually find his way at Cincinnati and help turn the Bearcats program around. We would see the fruits of his labor back in 2018 as the Bearcats went 11-2 with their newfound quarterback Desmond Ridder. The success would continue in 2019 with another 11-win season, and in 2020, the Bearcats would end up going 9-1. They played in the Peach Bowl, where they only lost by 3 points to the Georgia Bulldogs, and after 4 years, they wanted to build a statue for Coach Fickell. Going into the 2021 season, the Bearcats returned a ton of talent as they had Desmond Ridder back at quarterback, former Alabama transfer Jerome Ford at running back, and then a receiving core that included Alec Pierce, Tyler Scott, Trey Tucker, and tight end Josh Wiley. The offense was good enough, but on defense, they had a potential first-round pick in cornerback Ahmad Sauce Gardner, and they also had star defensive tackle Curtis Brooks. While Cincinnati was a Group of 5 team, they had the potential schedule to make it into the 4-team college football playoff. This was due to the fact that they had a crazy Week 3 game on their schedule, as that was a trip up to South Bend, Indiana, to play against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. To start out the season, the Bearcats easily beat both Miami of Ohio and Murray State, before having a little bit of trouble on the road against Indiana. Ultimately, they'd win that game by 2 touchdowns, but they got their first Power 4 win against the Hoosiers. That game against Notre Dame was absolutely crucial for them, as they would go into South Bend and win the game from start to finish and take down a top 10 Notre Dame team. Cincinnati did their job in the non-conference, and now they'd have to find a way to win out the rest of the season in order to make the college football playoff. They destroyed Temple, killed UCF, and then barely got by Navy. They would then beat Tulane, Tulsa, South Florida, and SMU before one final regular season game against East Carolina, which they took care of very easily. The Bearcats went 12-0 in the regular season and would play against number 21 Houston in the American Conference Championship. The Cougars were ranked number 21, but could not end up playing spoiler, as Cincinnati won 35-20. There were some trains of thought where people thought that Cincinnati might get left out of the playoff due to them being in the group before, but they did everything. They went 13-0 and beat two Power 4 teams on the road, one of which was a blue blood brand that was in the top 10. They would end up getting selected to play in the 2021 college football playoff, but as I said, they would lose to number 1 Alabama 27-6. It was okay though, because Cincinnati had found a way to make it to the playoff, but now they would have to hopefully build upon their 2021 season with another solid 2022 campaign. It definitely wasn't as good as the season prior, as Ben Bryant was now the starting quarterback, and they lost their first game to number 19 Arkansas. While they would string off 6 straight victories, a loss to UCF would cut themselves out of contention, and then they would lose to number 19 Tulane in the American Conference Championship. They then would follow that up with a loss to Louisville in the Fenway Bowl, and that's where things take a really interesting turn. Towards the end of the 2022 season, Luke Fickell would surprisingly take the head coaching job at Wisconsin. I never really understood why he did this, as he had a really solid system and he was building things at Cincinnati, and Wisconsin is pretty difficult to win at. He was hoping to go in there and change the culture and make Wisconsin a true national title contender, but ultimately that hasn't happened either. The Bearcats would decide to hire head coach Scott Satterfield, and what was really interesting about this is that Satterfield was the head coach of the team that they were supposed to play in the bowl game. The 2022 Fenway Bowl was between the Louisville Cardinals and Cincinnati Bearcats, which is a historic rivalry game, and while Satterfield would not end up coaching that game, it ended up being interesting. Louisville dominated the Bearcats 24-7, and this was sort of a glimpse as to what was on the horizon for the Bearcats. Let's now do a quick glimpse into who Coach Satterfield was. He was born in North Carolina, played quarterback for the Appalachian State Mountaineers, and then spent most of his coaching career up to that point with the Mountaineers as well. He started in 1998 and took over as the head man in 2013. During his 5 total seasons in Boone, North Carolina, Satterfield would win 51 games, including 3 bowl victories. He also almost notoriously beat Tennessee back in 2016, and Satterfield was seen as a good hire for Louisville after the whole Bobby Petrino mess. In his first year with the Cards, he would go 8-5 and win the Music City Bowl. After a pretty bad 2020 season though, he would get them back to a bowl game in 2021 with a 6-7 record. In 2022, he then won 7 games and got them to the Fenway Bowl, in which he didn't coach. By now, he had been poached by the Bearcats, and Satterfield was expected to turn around the Cincinnati football program. But what was really interesting about it all is that it was actually a blessing in disguise for the Cardinals. They got to go out and get their former alum Jeff Brom, who is now coaching at Purdue, and he's quickly made Louisville a college football playoff contender. Since he signed Satterfield to a very expensive coaching contract, and on paper, he was going to win instantly, right? Well, so far in the 3 years that Satterfield's been the head coach, he has struggled immensely. The 2023 team was very interesting, as former blue-chip recruit from Florida, Emory Jones, ended up becoming their starting quarterback, and former LSU running back Corey Kiner took off. For the most part, there were a lot of transfers on this team, and it was just a very forgettable season for Cincinnati. They ended up beating both Eastern Kentucky and Pittsburgh in Week 1 and Week 2, but then they stumbled against Miami of Ohio. They lost to their rival up the streets, and this game was a brutal blow to them. They then got killed by Oklahoma, beat by BYU, and dismantled by Iowa State. There were a couple of close games, including losses to Baylor and UCF, but their only remaining win would come on the road against the Houston Cougars. The Bearcats would end up going 3-9 with a 1-8 mark in the conference, and in their first year in the Big 12 and under Coach Satterfield, it was a complete and utter disaster. There was not a lot of hope for Cincinnati fans, but going into the 2024 season, they brought in some new players, and that was expected to make things better. The first thing they did was go out and get a new quarterback, and they got Brendan Sorsby. He was an underrated 3-star recruit from the state of Texas who ended up blowing up towards the end of the 2023 season for the Indiana Hoosiers. Sorsby would end up making the move over to Cincinnati, and they also got Corey Kiner to come back and their leading receiver, Xavier Henderson. This really wouldn't do much for the Bearcats though, as they only marginally improved. They beat Towson in Week 1 and then blew a historic game against Pittsburgh. Pitt had a crazy finish to that game, but at least they beat Miami of Ohio. For the second straight year, they would beat Houston, and now all of a sudden, they were 3-1, and they could have easily been 4-0. There was some hope on the horizon for the Bearcats, but then they lost by 3 to Texas Tech. This would ultimately end up being a death blow for them, as they could have gone to a bowl game if they pulled that off, as they would then beat UCF and surprisingly beat Arizona State, who ended up winning the conference, before then melting down. Cincinnati was 5-2 on October 9th of 2024, but by November 30th, they were 5-7, 3-6 in the conference, and now a second straight season of being done in the month of November. Scott Satterfield had now missed his second straight bowl game and now finished with his second straight losing season. His seat was going to be absolutely flaming going into the 2025 season, and he would have an opportunity to play a home game against Nebraska. Yeah. This was a really odd situation, as for some reason Cincinnati decided to move a home game to Arrowhead Stadium, which was much closer to the Nebraska fan base than it was and it made it much easier for Nebraska fans to get to the game than Cincinnati fans. This game would also be in the national spotlight, as they would play on Thursday, August 28th, and would sort of help open up the 2025 college football season. They barely moved the ball as the offense was stuck in place, but they did get a chance at the end of the game. After a great punt by the Huskers, it looked like Nebraska was going to blow it. After a crazy fourth down conversion, Cincinnati was in good shape to at least attempt a game-tying field goal. Instead, Brendan Sorsby made a boneheaded decision throwing a pass to the end zone, and it was picked off by a Nebraska corner, sealing the game and epitomizing the Scott Satterfield era. Scott Satterfield had a chance to have a statement game in a home crowd that was anything but an advantage, but instead they had a terrible play to end the game, and now the season is already off on the wrong foot. There are a few silver linings though, as while the passing game was pretty bad for the Bearcats, Sorsby is a really good runner and is very difficult to contain. Running back Tawi Walker, I think, showed some glimpses, and then also their receiver transfer Cyrus Allen from Louisiana Tech looks like he could be a true wide receiver 1 if given proper touches. The defense also wasn't horrible, but things are going to have to change soon for them. Luckily, they get a couple of games to figure it out, as they'll play against both Bowling Green and Northwestern State. If Cincinnati is not 2-1 going into the game against Kansas, then I think Scott Satterfield should honestly be fired. The Big 12 slate includes Kansas, Iowa State, UCF, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Utah, Arizona, BYU, and TCU. It's honestly pretty difficult to make predictions, but I think there is a path here. I'm not sold on UCF, Oklahoma State, Arizona, or BYU, so that's a chance for 4 wins, and that would get them to that 6-win mark. I think Satterfield absolutely has to win 6 games, and also change the perception. If these games are scrappy and terrible, then I see no reason why they will keep him as the head coach, but if they can find a way to get some excitement, play some football in the month of December, then Satterfield does have a fighting shot. But that's honestly a lot to ask. The Scott Satterfield hire has absolutely blown up in Cincinnati's face, but the whole situation is just weird. Luke Fickell doesn't look like he's doing a very good job at Wisconsin, Satterfield has been awful at Cincinnati, and the real winner of this has been Louisville. They got rid of an average coach and instead got a near elite coach in Jeff Brom, and now all of a sudden, after making the college football playoff, being the best group of 5 team in the country, and looking like they had a serious future in the Big 12, the Cincinnati Bearcats are now near the bottom, don't have a lot of momentum going, and may have to make an expensive buyout. But what do you guys think? If you're a Cincinnati football fan, what the heck has gone wrong with the program? Why do you think Scott Satterfield hasn't succeeded? And how do you guys save your season? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.